Cops arrest ex-convict for shoplifting, unaware he is an off-duty police captain. Get on the ground now. Officer Martinez's voice echoed through Riverside Mall as he slammed Marcus Thompson face-first against the cold tile floor. The impact sent shockwaves through Marcus's 42-year-old body, his knees scraping against the rough surface as handcuffs clicked tight around his wrists. Shoppers stopped mid-stride, phones emerging like weapons as the scene unfolded near the electronics store. A middle-aged white woman clutched her purse closer, whispering to her friend, "I knew something was off about him the moment he walked in." Marcus said nothing. His jaw clenched as Officer Davidson pressed a knee into his back, the weight crushing his ribs. 20 years on the force had taught him exactly how this played out. The more he protested, the worse it would get. "Sir, you're under arrest for shoplifting," Martinez announced loudly, playing to his growing audience. Suspect was seen concealing merchandise and attempting to leave without payment. The store manager, a nervous young man named Kevin, hovered nearby with a tablet in his shaking hands. "The security footage shows him putting something in his jacket pocket," he said, though his voice cracked with uncertainty. Marcus finally spoke, his words measured and calm despite the fire burning in his chest. "Check your cameras again. Check them carefully." Something in his tone made Kevin pause. There was no panic, no desperation. Just the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what those cameras would show. "Save it for the judge," Davidson sneered, hauling Marcus to his feet. Another ex-con thinking he can just walk out with whatever he wants. The crowd murmured approval. Several people nodded, satisfied that justice was being served. An elderly man in a veteran's cap shook his head in disgust. Kids today have no respect for the law. But Marcus's daughter Sarah, who had been browsing in the music section, pushed through the gathering crowd. At 19, she had inherited her father's steel spine and sharp tongue. "Dad." Her voice cut through the chatter like a blade. "It's okay, sweetheart," Marcus said softly, his eyes never leaving Officer Martinez. "Just a misunderstanding." Martinez's radio crackled to life. "Unit 47, what's your status on the shoplifting call?" "Suspect in custody. Bringing him in now." As they marched Marcus toward the exit, his mind raced through possibilities. He could reveal his identity right now, flash his captain's badge, watch their faces crumble into embarrassment and fear. But something deeper was at work here. The speed of their response, the certainty in their accusations, the way they had targeted him specifically. The automatic doors slid open, revealing a patrol car parked directly outside. Marcus noticed the positioning. They had been waiting for him. This wasn't random. "Dad." Sarah called out, following at a distance. Her phone was in her hand, recording everything. Marcus turned back to look at his daughter, and for the first time since the handcuffs clicked shut, he smiled. That small gesture sent a chill through Officer Martinez, though he couldn't explain why. "Make sure you get everything on video, baby girl," Marcus said clearly. "Every single detail. If you're drawn to stories about justice and standing up against corruption, make sure to subscribe to the channel because what happens next will shock you to your core." The patrol car door slammed shut, but Marcus Thompson's real fight was just beginning. What these officers didn't know was that they had just arrested the most decorated captain in the city's history, a man who had spent the last 5 years investigating corruption in their very department. The fluorescent lights of the precinct booking room cast harsh shadows across Marcus's face as Officer Martinez shoved him onto the metal bench. The familiar smell of disinfectant and stale coffee filled his nostrils, scents he knew from the other side of these walls. Marcus Thompson, the desk sergeant read from his computer screen, fingers clicking across the keyboard. Age 42. Previous arrests for armed robbery, assault, drug possession. He looked up with disgust. "Real piece of work we got here." Marcus's jaw tightened. Those arrests were from 23 years ago, when he was 19 and running with the wrong crowd. Before he found purpose. Before he became the man his daughter could be proud of. "Once a criminal, always a criminal," Martinez muttered to Davidson as they completed their paperwork. "These people never change." The booking process dragged on with deliberate slowness. Each fingerprint pressed with unnecessary force. Each photograph taken with Marcus positioned like a trophy. The officer's casual cruelty revealed itself in every interaction. "You know what I love about cases like this?" Davidson said loudly, ensuring Marcus could hear every word. Clear cut. No gray areas. Bad guy steals, good guys catch him. Simple. But Marcus noticed things his captors missed. The way Martinez kept checking his phone, texting someone with urgent intensity. The nervous glances between the officers when they thought no one was watching. The fact that his arrest report had been prepared with suspicious speed. A heavy-set lieutenant emerged from the back office, his belly straining against his uniform shirt. Lieutenant Rogers had the look of a man who had given up on justice long ago, content to collect his paycheck and count down to retirement. "Thompson," Rogers called out, approaching with a folder in his hand. "Let's make this easy on everyone. You sign a confession, take a plea deal, and this whole thing goes away quietly." "I didn't steal anything," Marcus said evenly. Rogers laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "Son, I've been doing this for 28 years. I can smell guilt from across the room, and you reek of it." Marcus studied Rogers's face, noting the expensive watch that didn't match a lieutenant's salary, the designer shoes that cost more than most officers made in a month. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The store manager seemed pretty uncertain about what he saw, Marcus observed. "Security footage doesn't lie," Martinez jumped in, too quickly. "Shows you clear as day stuffing merchandise in your jacket. Then let's watch it together." The silence that followed lasted just a beat too long. Rogers cleared his throat, shuffling papers in his folder. "Equipment's down for maintenance. But we have witness statements." Marcus leaned back against the bench, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. 20 years of interrogations had taught him to read the tells. The shifting eyes, the defensive postures, the way Martinez's hand trembled slightly as he signed documents. "You boys seem awfully nervous for officers who caught someone red-handed." "Nervous?" Davidson stepped forward, fists clenched. "You think we're nervous about some two-bit thug?" "I think," Marcus said quietly, "that you're terrified of what happens when people start asking the right questions." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Rogers's face flushed red, veins bulging in his neck. "You threatening us, Thompson?" "Just making an observation." Marcus's phone call was finally granted after 2 hours of processing delays. He dialed a number from memory, waiting as it rang once, twice. "Sarah? I need you to call Detective Lisa Park at Internal Affairs. Tell her Marcus Thompson needs her at the Riverside Precinct immediately." Rogers snatched the phone away. "Time's up." "Dad." Sarah's voice crackled through the speaker before the line went dead. Marcus looked up at Rogers, who was breathing heavily now, beads of sweat forming on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Scared of Internal Affairs, Lieutenant?" "I'm not scared of anything," Rogers shot back, but his voice cracked on the last word. The pieces were falling into place for Marcus. The targeted arrest, the rushed booking, the pressure for a quick confession. This wasn't about shoplifting. Someone wanted him silenced, discredited, removed from his investigation. But they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated exactly who they were dealing with. As night fell outside the precinct windows, Marcus Thompson sat in his cell, not as a defeated victim, but as a predator studying his prey. Tomorrow, these officers would learn the true meaning of fear. Dawn broke through the barred windows of the holding cell as footsteps echoed down the corridor. Detective Lisa Park's sharp heels clicked against the polished floor with military precision. At 38, she had built her reputation on dismantling corrupt cops with surgical efficiency. "Where is he?" Her voice cut through the morning quiet like a blade. Rogers emerged from his office, coffee mug in hand, trying to project casual authority. "Detective Park. Wasn't expecting Internal Affairs so early. Captain Thompson called my personal line last night." Her steel-gray eyes fixed on Rogers with laser intensity. "I want to see him. Now." Marcus rose from the narrow cot as Lisa approached his cell. 23 years had passed since their last case together, but their partnership remained unbreakable. She was the only person who knew the full scope of his current investigation. "Lisa," Marcus said quietly, gripping the bars. They took the bait. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened around her briefcase. "How bad is it?" "Martinez, Davidson, Rogers. All of them dirty." Marcus lowered his voice. "The Riverside Mall operation we suspected? They're not just protecting it. They're running it. Detective Park turned to face Rogers, who had been hovering nearby, clearly trying to eavesdrop. "Lieutenant, I need the arrest report and all evidence related to this case." "Sure thing," Rogers said too quickly. "But it's pretty straightforward. Caught him red-handed stealing electronics. Then you won't mind if I review the security footage." The color drained from Rogers's face. "Like I told Thompson, equipment's down for maintenance." Lisa pulled out her phone, speed-dialing a number. "This is Detective Park, Internal Affairs. I need a technical team at Riverside Mall immediately to recover security footage from yesterday's incident." "Wait," Rogers stepped forward, panic creeping into his voice. There might be some footage available after all. But Marcus was already 3 steps ahead. During his years investigating this corruption ring, he had planted allies throughout the department. Officers who still believed in justice, who had grown sick of watching their colleagues profit from crime. Officer Jennifer Wu appeared at the end of the hallway, her usually nervous demeanor replaced by quiet determination. In her hands was a manila folder thick with documents. "Detective Park." Wu's voice trembled slightly. "I have something you need to see." She opened the folder, revealing photographs, bank statements, and recorded conversations. "For the past 6 months, I've been documenting everything at Captain Thompson's request. The false arrests, the planted evidence, the payoffs from local businesses." Rogers lunged forward, trying to grab the folder, but Lisa stepped between them. "Touch that evidence, Lieutenant, and you'll be charged with obstruction of justice." Wu continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Martinez and Davidson have been targeting specific individuals for arrest. People who asked too many questions about missing evidence, who complained about harassment, who threatened to expose the corruption." Marcus watched Rogers's face cycle through anger, fear, and desperation. "That's all fabricated," the lieutenant sputtered. "Thompson's been planning this for months. He's trying to frame innocent officers to cover up his own crimes." "My crimes?" Marcus's voice carried a deadly calm that made everyone in the hallway freeze. "Let me tell you about crimes, Rogers." He moved closer to the bars, his presence somehow filling the entire corridor despite being locked in a cell. "For 5 years, I've watched you and your crew steal from evidence lockers, plant drugs on innocent people, and take bribes from every criminal organization in the city." "You have no proof," Rogers shot back, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Marcus smiled, the expression predatory and cold. "I have recordings of you negotiating with the Riverside Mall security chief. I have photographs of you meeting with drug dealers behind the old warehouse on 5th Street. I have bank records showing deposits that don't match your salary." Each revelation hit Rogers like a physical blow. His coffee mug slipped from his trembling fingers, shattering against the floor in an explosion of ceramic and brown liquid. "But most importantly," Marcus continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "I have video evidence of you and Martinez planting the merchandise in my jacket yesterday." The silence that followed was deafening. Rogers's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Martinez, who had been approaching to start his shift, turned and ran for the exit. Lisa Park pulled out her handcuffs, her expression grim but satisfied. "Lieutenant Rogers, you're under arrest for conspiracy, evidence tampering, and violation of civil rights." As the cuffs clicked around Rogers's wrists, Marcus felt a satisfaction deeper than any he had experienced in his 20 years of law enforcement. But this was only the beginning. The corruption ran deeper than just a few dirty cops. There were judges, prosecutors, and city officials all feeding from the same poisoned well. The arrest had been designed to silence him permanently. Instead, it had given him exactly the evidence he needed to bring them all down. The Riverside precinct erupted into chaos as federal agents flooded through the doors like a tactical storm. FBI agent Sarah Chun led the charge, her voice cutting through the morning commotion with military authority. "This is a federal raid. All personnel step away from computers and filing cabinets immediately." Marcus watched from his cell as 20 years of corruption unraveled in real time. Officers scrambled to delete files, shred documents, and make panicked phone calls. But it was too late. Every movement was being recorded, every desperate act adding to their growing list of charges. Detective Park approached Marcus's cell with a key ring, her expression mixing triumph with exhaustion. "Captain Thompson, you're free to go." All charges dropped. As the cell door swung open, Marcus stepped into the hallway that had witnessed his humiliation just hours before. Now it buzzed with federal agents cataloging evidence, making arrests, and dismantling the criminal enterprise that had operated under the badge's protection. Agent Chen approached, extending her hand. "Captain Thompson, your 5-year investigation just handed us the biggest police corruption case in the state's history." Martinez was dragged through the hallway in handcuffs, his earlier arrogance replaced by raw terror. He spotted Marcus and lunged forward, spittle flying from his lips. "You destroyed everything. 20 years of my career." 20 years of crime, Marcus corrected calmly. "There's a difference." The scope of the operation became clear as agents unveiled their findings. The Riverside Mall had been a front for money laundering, with corrupt officers ensuring that anyone who asked questions disappeared into the system through false arrests and coerced plea bargains. Judge Harrison, who had processed hundreds of these fabricated cases, was led away in handcuffs as news cameras captured every moment. His expensive suits and luxury car had been purchased with blood money extracted from innocent victims. But the most devastating revelation came when agents raided City Hall. Mayor Bradley, who had publicly praised the mall's crime prevention partnership, was found with offshore accounts containing over $2 million in bribes. Marcus stood on the precinct steps as reporters surrounded him, microphones thrust forward like weapons. The questions came in rapid fire. "Captain Thompson, how long have you suspected this corruption? What made you decide to go undercover in your own department? How many innocent people were framed by this operation?" Marcus raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every victim who had suffered under the system. "For 5 years, I watched good officers quit in disgust while criminals wearing badges destroyed lives for profit. Yesterday's arrest wasn't my lowest point. It was theirs." He looked directly into the cameras, knowing that his words would reach every corner of the city. "They thought my criminal record from 23 years ago made me weak, made me vulnerable. They forgot that sometimes the people who've walked through darkness know best how to fight it." Sarah pushed through the crowd, throwing her arms around her father. Tears streamed down her face as she held him tight. "Dad, I was so scared they were going to destroy you." "Baby girl," Marcus whispered, stroking her hair. "They tried to bury me. But they didn't know I was a seed." The federal investigation would eventually uncover 247 false arrests, 89 planted evidence cases, and a money laundering operation worth over $15 million. Dozens of convictions would be overturned, families would be reunited, and lives would be rebuilt. But standing on those steps, surrounded by the wreckage of corruption, Marcus felt something more powerful than victory. He felt hope. The system could be cleaned. Justice could be restored. And sometimes, the very people they tried to silence would become the loudest voices for change. As news helicopters circled overhead and federal agents continued their work, Marcus Thompson walked down the precinct steps a free man. But more than that, he walked down as a reminder that integrity could never be arrested, courage could never be imprisoned, and the truth would always find its way to light. 6 months later, Marcus stood behind the podium at the Police Academy graduation ceremony, looking out at 42 fresh faces eager to serve and protect. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man they had tried to destroy was now training the next generation of officers. "Some of you will face moments that test everything you believe in," he told the graduating class. "Moments when doing the right thing costs you friends, promotions, maybe even your safety. In those moments, remember that the badge doesn't make you honorable. Honor makes the badge worth wearing." Sarah sat in the front row, now a second-year law student specializing in criminal justice reform. Her father's case had inspired her career change from business to law. She wanted to ensure that what happened to him could never happen to another innocent person. Detective Park, recently promoted to Deputy Chief of Internal Affairs, presented Marcus with a commendation for his undercover work. The 5-year investigation had become a textbook case study in fighting corruption from within. Captain Thompson's sacrifice and dedication resulted in the exoneration of 247 wrongly convicted citizens, she announced to the applauding crowd. His work has fundamentally changed how this department operates. The transformation was visible throughout the city. Officer Wu now headed the Ethics Training Division, teaching new recruits to recognize and report corruption. The Riverside Mall had been sold to new ownership committed to community partnership rather than predatory enforcement. Most importantly, the victims were finding their voices. Marcus received letters daily from people whose lives had been destroyed by false arrests, thanking him for giving them hope that justice still existed. One letter particularly moved him. It was from Maria Santos, a single mother who had been arrested on fabricated drug charges by Martinez 2 years earlier. She had lost her job, her apartment, and nearly lost her children to the system. "Captain Thompson," she wrote, "because of your courage, my conviction was overturned. I got my children back. I found a new job. You didn't just save your own life, you saved mine too." Marcus kept that letter in his desk drawer, reading it whenever the weight of leadership felt too heavy. The corrupt officers faced justice proportional to their crimes. Martinez received 15 years for conspiracy, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. Rogers died of a heart attack during his trial, his legacy forever tainted by his crimes. Davidson cooperated with federal investigators and received a reduced sentence of 8 years. Judge Harrison was disbarred and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His luxury home was sold, with proceeds going to a victim compensation fund. Mayor Bradley's fall was the most dramatic. The man who had campaigned on law and order was sentenced to 20 years for racketeering and money laundering. His political career ended in handcuffs and headlines. But Marcus knew the real victory wasn't in their punishment, it was in the system's renewal. New oversight committees, body cameras on all officers, and anonymous reporting systems had been implemented citywide. As the graduation ceremony concluded, a young officer approached Marcus. Officer James Mitchell was 22, fresh out of the academy, with the same idealistic fire Marcus remembered from his own early days. "Captain, I wanted to thank you," Mitchell said, shaking Marcus's hand. "Your story is why I became a cop. To prove that good officers still exist." Marcus smiled, seeing his younger self in the recruit's determined eyes. "Remember, son, integrity isn't about never falling down. It's about always getting back up and doing what's right." That evening, Marcus sat on his back porch with Sarah, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and purple. The city stretched out before them, quieter now, safer. "Do you ever regret it, Dad?" Sarah asked. "Going through all that pain, risking everything?" Marcus considered the question, thinking of all the lives changed, all the families reunited, all the innocent people who would never face the corruption he had dismantled. "Baby girl," he said finally, "the only thing I would regret is staying silent when I had the power to speak up." The lesson was simple but profound. Sometimes the very experiences that seem designed to destroy us become the foundation for our greatest contributions. Marcus's criminal past hadn't disqualified him from justice. It had prepared him to recognize injustice in all its forms. His story became a reminder that redemption is always possible, that courage can emerge from the most unlikely places, and that one person willing to stand up can change an entire system. Justice isn't about being perfect. It's about being persistent. It's about getting back up every time they knock you down and proving that truth, integrity, and courage will always triumph over corruption and fear. If you believe in the power of standing up for what's right, subscribe to this channel for more stories that prove good can overcome evil when we refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice.